The rumble of the approaching stagecoach broke the tense silence as Katherine Zimmer stood on the dusty porch of her family's modest ranch house, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a wild Mustang. It was 1876 in the rugged terrain of the Wyoming Territory, and today was the day her life would change forever. "They're here, Katherine," her father muttered, his voice hollow with defeat. William Zimmer was a broken man, his shoulders hunched under the weight of unpaid debts and broken promises. Katherine smoothed down her faded blue dress, the nicest one she owned, though the hem was frayed and the collar had been mended 3 times over. At 22, she had grown accustomed to hardship on the frontier, but nothing had prepared her for this betrayal. "Father, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the approaching horses. "There must be another way." William Zimmer wouldn't meet her eyes. "The Harrington brothers have agreed to clear my debts in exchange for your services." He faltered on the last word. "They need a woman to cook and clean at their trading post. It's done, Katherine. The papers are signed." The stagecoach lurched to a stop in a cloud of dust, and 2 men descended. The Harrington brothers were notorious throughout the territory, not outlaws exactly, but men who operated in the shadowy spaces between law and lawlessness. The elder brother, Thomas, was a bull of a man with small, calculating eyes that assessed Katherine as if she were livestock at auction. "Time to go, Miss Zimmer," Thomas called out, not bothering with pleasantries. "Your father's debt is settled the moment you step into that coach." Katherine felt her world constricting. In the harsh reality of frontier life, women had few options, and her father had just eliminated what little choice she had. She turned to him one last time, searching for any sign that he might change his mind, but his eyes remained fixed on the ground. "One valise," the younger Harrington barked. "That's all you get to bring." With trembling hands, Katherine picked up the small bag containing her meager possessions: a hairbrush, a small Bible that had been her mother's, 2 dresses, and a daguerreotype of her family taken when her mother was still alive. Before she could say another word, Thomas Harrington's rough hand closed around her upper arm. "We've got a schedule to keep," he said, pulling her toward the coach. As Katherine was being led away, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. The Harringtons paused, squinting against the afternoon sun. A lone rider approached at a steady gallop, the silhouette growing larger against the backdrop of the vast Wyoming sky. "Who the hell is that?" the younger Harrington muttered, his hand instinctively moving to the gun at his hip. The rider slowed as he approached, and Katherine could make out a lean figure atop a magnificent chestnut stallion. He wore a dusty black hat pulled low over his eyes, and his dark coat billowed slightly in the breeze. When he drew close enough, he tipped his hat back, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind, yet strikingly handsome with piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Afternoon," the stranger said, his voice deep and measured as he dismounted with fluid grace. "Seems I've arrived at an interesting moment." Thomas Harrington's grip on Katherine's arm tightened. "Keep riding, stranger. This is private business." The man's gaze shifted to Katherine, noting her distress and the grip on her arm. "Is that so?" He approached with unhurried confidence, dust from the trail coating his boots and trousers. "Name's Samuel Hawkins. I'm looking for William Zimmer." Katherine's father stepped forward, confusion evident on his weary face. "I'm Zimmer. What's your business with me?" Samuel Hawkins reached into his coat and produced a folded document. "I believe you're in possession of a parcel of land adjoining the North Fork of the Powder River. I've had my eye on it for some time." William frowned. "That land's worthless nothing but rocks and scrub. Besides, I've just settled my debts with these gentlemen." Samuel's eyes flickered to the Harrington brothers, then back to Katherine. "By selling your daughter to these men." His voice remained calm, but there was an undercurrent of steel in his words. "She's not being sold," Thomas Harrington interjected. "She's working off her father's debt, a fair arrangement in these parts." Samuel seemed to consider this, then reached into his pocket again and pulled out a small leather pouch. "How much is the debt?" William Zimmer sputtered. $200, but I'll give you $300 for the land," Samuel said, "and the lady stays right where she is." Thomas Harrington stepped forward, his face flushing with anger. "Now see here, Hawkins, or whatever your name is, we have a contract with Zimmer. The girl comes with us." Samuel's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, but Katherine noticed how his right hand now hung closer to the holstered revolver at his hip. "The way I see it, Mr. Harrington, you're being offered the chance to walk away with your money and your dignity intact." The tension in the air thickened, and Katherine held her breath. She didn't know this Samuel Hawkins, but at that moment, he represented a sliver of hope she hadn't dared imagine moments before. Thomas Harrington assessed the stranger, clearly calculating his odds. Samuel Hawkins didn't cut an imposing figure like the burly Harrington, but there was something in his stance and the steady look in his eyes that suggested crossing him would be a grave mistake. "Fine," Thomas finally spat. "Give Zimmer his 300 and we'll call it square." "But you're making a poor investment, Hawkins. That land's not worth spit." Samuel didn't respond to the taunt. Instead, he counted out the money and handed it to William Zimmer, who accepted it with trembling hands. "The deed," Samuel reminded him quietly. William disappeared into the house and returned moments later with a yellow document which he passed to Samuel. After examining it briefly, Samuel nodded and tucked it inside his coat. The Harrington brothers, recognizing defeat, climbed back into their stagecoach. "You've made an enemy today, Hawkins," Thomas called out as the driver snapped the reins. Samuel tipped his hat as the coach pulled away. "Wouldn't be the first time." Once the dust had settled, Katherine found her voice. "Mr. Hawkins, I don't know how to thank you." Samuel turned to her, and for the first time, she caught a glimpse of warmth in those blue eyes. "No thanks necessary, Miss Zimmer. I've been wanting that parcel for some time." William Zimmer cleared his throat awkwardly. "You said you'd pay 300. Samuel's gaze hardened as he turned to the older man. "And you were willing to sell your daughter to settle a debt. Consider yourself lucky I'm paying anything at all." He handed over $200. "This squares what you owed the Harringtons. I suggest you use it wisely." William took the money without protest, the shame evident in his downcast eyes. Samuel turned back to Katherine. "Miss Zimmer, I realize this puts you in a difficult position. Your father's actions have left you vulnerable, and I've intruded on a family matter." Katherine lifted her chin, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. "My father was desperate, Mr. Hawkins. We've had 3 bad years in a row drought, then cattle sickness, then the bank calling in our loans." Samuel nodded. "I understand desperation, but there are lines a man shouldn't cross." He glanced at the sun, which was beginning its descent toward the western horizon. "I've got a small spread about a day's ride from here. It's not much, but I'm establishing a horse breeding operation. I could use help, honest work with fair pay." Katherine hesitated, her mind racing. The offer seemed too good to be true, yet the alternative was unthinkable. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Samuel's expression softened slightly. "My mother found herself in a similar situation when I was a boy. A stranger helped us then. Sometimes that's all it takes, one person willing to step in when the world's turned its back." Katherine looked at her father, who stood awkwardly on the porch, the money clutched in his hand. "Father." William Zimmer nodded slowly. "Go with him, Katherine. There's nothing left for you here. I've failed you in every way a father can." The pain of his admission cut through her, but Katherine recognized the truth in his words. Their ranch was dying, and with it, any future she might have had there. "I'll need a few minutes to gather my things," she said quietly. Samuel nodded. "Take your time. We won't set out until morning. I'll make camp here tonight if that's acceptable." As Katherine entered the house that had been her home for her entire life, she felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. She was leaving behind everything familiar, embarking on an uncertain journey with a man she'd just met. Yet something about Samuel Hawkins, the quiet authority in his bearing, the integrity in his actions, gave her hope that perhaps this sudden change might lead to something better than what lay behind. The night passed slowly. Katherine lay awake in her bedroom, listening to the occasional sounds from outside: the soft nickering of Samuel's horse, the hoot of an owl, the whisper of the wind through the cottonwoods. By dawn, she had packed her few belongings and said a stilted goodbye to her father, who could barely meet her eyes. Samuel had his horse saddled and ready when she emerged from the house. "You'll ride with me until we reach the next town," he explained. "Then we'll see about getting you your own mount." Katherine approached the magnificent chestnut stallion with trepidation. "He's beautiful," she said, reaching out hesitantly to stroke the animal's neck. "This is Rusty," Samuel said, a note of pride in his voice. "Best horse I've ever owned. Saved my life more than once." With Samuel's help, Katherine settled behind the saddle, holding onto his waist as they set off. The rhythm of the horse's gait was soothing, and despite her apprehension, Katherine found herself relaxing as they put distance between themselves and her father's failing ranch. They rode in comfortable silence for several hours, stopping occasionally to rest the horse and drink from Samuel's canteen. As the day progressed, Katherine gathered the courage to ask the questions that had been troubling her. "Mr. Hawkins, you mentioned you're starting a horse breeding operation. Have you been in Wyoming territory long?" Samuel adjusted his hat against the midday sun. "About 5 years. Came west after the war. Worked as a scout for the Army, then as a ranch hand. Saved every penny I could. Bought my land 2 years ago." "And you live there alone?" He nodded. "Just me and the horses, and Mrs. Abernathy comes by twice a week from the nearby settlement to help with cooking and such." Katherine processed this information with relief. The presence of another woman, even periodically, eased one of her concerns about going to live at a stranger's ranch. "I want to be clear about my expectations," Samuel continued, as if reading her thoughts. "I'm offering you employment, Miss Zimmer. You'll have your own quarters, your own privacy. I respect a woman's dignity." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you for clarifying, Mr. Hawkins." They reached the small settlement of Pine Creek by late afternoon. The town consisted of little more than a general store, a saloon, a small church, and a handful of houses. Samuel helped Katherine dismount and led her into the general store, where a bell tinkled as they entered. "Samuel Hawkins," the shopkeeper exclaimed. "Twice in 1 month. To what do we owe this pleasure?" "Afternoon, Mr. Beaumont," Samuel greeted him. "I'm looking to outfit Miss Zimmer here with a few necessities. She'll be working at my ranch." Mr. Beaumont's eyes widened slightly as he took in Katherine's presence, but he quickly composed himself. Of course. What will the lady be needing?" Over the next hour, Samuel insisted on purchasing practical items for Katherine's: sturdy boots, work gloves, a warm coat, and several yards of fabric for new dresses. When she protested at the expense, he waved away her concerns. "Consider it an advance on your wages," he said simply. "You can't work effectively without proper gear." While Katherine was examining the fabric selection, Samuel had a quiet conversation with Mr. Beaumont. When she approached the counter with her choices, The shopkeeper smiled warmly. "Mr. Hawkins tells me you're in need of a horse. I happen to know that the widow Jenkins is looking to sell her mare. Gentle creature, good for a lady rider." Catherine looked to Samuel in surprise. "You're buying me a horse. You'll need your own transportation," he replied matter-of-factly. "Can't have you dependent on me to get around." By the time they left Pine Creek, Catherine was the owner of a gentle bay mare named Daisy, complete with a side saddle that Samuel insisted was more appropriate for a lady than riding astride. Their journey continued at a more comfortable pace, with Catherine riding alongside Samuel rather than behind him. As the sun began to set, they made camp by a small creek. Samuel efficiently gathered firewood and started a fire, then prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and coffee. Catherine watched him work, impressed by his competence and self-sufficiency. "You've done this many times before," she observed as he handed her a tin plate of food. Samuel smiled faintly. "Too many to count. The trail becomes a second home when you've lived as I have." "And what kind of life has that been, Mr. Hawkins?" Catherine asked, emboldened by the intimacy of sharing a campfire. Samuel stared into the flames for a long moment. "A searching one, I suppose. After the war, I couldn't settle back into normal life. Too many ghosts." He sipped his coffee. "The West offered space to breathe, room to find myself again." "And have you? Found yourself, I mean?" His eyes met hers across the fire, and something in his expression made Catherine's heart quicken. "Parts of me, still searching for others." The night deepened around them, stars appearing like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Samuel arranged Catherine's bedroll a respectful distance from his own, then took the first watch while she slept. When Catherine awoke before dawn, she found Samuel already up, tending to the horses. "Good morning," he said quietly. "We should reach my place by midday if we make good time." The remainder of their journey passed pleasantly. As they rode, Samuel pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his experiences in the territory. Catherine found herself drawn to his quiet strength, and the thoughtful way he expressed himself so different from the rough men she'd encountered at her father's ranch. When they crested a hill around noon, Samuel reined in his horse. "There it is," he said, gesturing to the valley below. Catherine gasped softly. Nestled in the valley was a picturesque homestead, a sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney, several well-constructed outbuildings, and a large corral where about a dozen horses grazed peacefully. A stream wound through the property, and beyond it, the land rose into rolling hills covered with pine and aspen. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Samuel's face brightened with a rare, full smile. "Been working on it for 2 years now. Still plenty to do, but it's coming along." They rode down into the valley, and as they approached the cabin, the door opened and an older woman emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. "Samuel Hawkins, I wasn't expecting you back so soon," she called out, her round face creased with surprise. "Mrs. Abernathy," Samuel greeted her as he dismounted. "I've brought someone who'll be staying with us. This is Miss Katherine Zimmer." Mrs. Abernathy assessed Catherine with keen eyes, then broke into a warm smile. "Well, it's about time this place had a woman's touch. Come in, come in. I've just made a fresh batch of biscuits." The cabin's interior was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, wooden table and chairs, and a few pieces of well-crafted furniture. 2 doors led off to what Catherine assumed were bedrooms. "This one will be yours," Samuel said, opening one of the doors to reveal a small but clean room with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small table with a mirror. "Mrs. Abernathy has been using it when she stays overnight, but she's agreed to move to the new room I've been building off the back of the house." "It's no trouble at all," Mrs. Abernathy assured them, bustling about as she served up plates of biscuits and beef stew. "Been telling Samuel for ages he needs help around here. Man can't live on his own cooking forever, and this place needs a woman's touch." Katherine felt a blush rise to her cheeks at the older woman's implication, but Samuel smoothly changed the subject, updating Mrs. Abernathy on his business in town and inquiring after the horses. Over the next few days, Katherine settled into a routine at the ranch. Each morning, she rose early to help Samuel with the horses before returning to the cabin to prepare breakfast. During the days, she assisted with various tasks, mending tack, organizing supplies, and learning about the horse breeding operation from Samuel, who proved to be a patient teacher. "These two are my pride and joy," he told her one afternoon as they stood by the corral, watching a magnificent black stallion and a chestnut mare. "Thunder and Lady. Their foals will fetch top prices once word gets around about their quality." Katherine leaned against the fence rail, enjoying the warm summer breeze and the peaceful sounds of the horses. "You have a real gift with them," she observed. "They trust you completely." Samuel's expression softened as he watched the animals. Horses are honest creatures. They respond to kindness and consistency, no deception in them. "Unlike people," Katherine said quietly, thinking of her father and the Harringtons. Samuel glanced at her, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Some people, not all." As the weeks passed, Katherine found herself increasingly drawn to Samuel. His quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, and the gentle way he treated both his animals and the people around him were qualities she'd rarely encountered in men. She noticed, too, the subtle changes in his behavior, how he began to linger over breakfast, engaging her in conversation, how his eyes followed her when she moved about the cabin, how he seemed to find excuses to be near her. One evening, after Mrs. Abernathy had retired to her room, Katherine and Samuel sat by the fire. The autumn nights were growing cooler, and the warmth of the flames was welcome after a long day's work. "You've transformed this place," Samuel said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "I never realized how empty it was until you came." Katherine looked up from her mending, surprised by the candor in his voice. "I've done very little, really. You've done more than you know." His eyes met hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "Katherine," a sudden pounding on the door interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Samuel rose quickly, his hand moving instinctively to the revolver he kept on the mantelpiece. "Who's there?" he called, his voice hard. "Open up, Hawkins," a familiar voice demanded. "We've got business to settle." Katherine felt the blood drain from her face. "It's Thomas Harrington," she whispered. Samuel's expression darkened. "Stay back," he instructed her quietly, then opened the door just enough to see outside. Thomas Harrington stood on the porch, flanked by his brother and two other men Katherine didn't recognize. All four were armed. "Evening, gentlemen," Samuel said calmly. "It's a bit late for social calls." Thomas Harrington's face was flushed with anger or whiskey, possibly both. "Don't play coy, Hawkins. You know why we're here. That land you bought from Zimmer turns out it's worth a hell of a lot more than any of us thought. Gold's been discovered not 5 miles from that parcel." Katherine gasped softly. So that was why Samuel had been so interested in her father's seemingly worthless land. "I'm aware of the discovery," Samuel replied evenly. "What's your point, Harrington?" "My point is you cheated us," Thomas snarled. "You knew about that gold when you interrupted our deal with Zimmer. We want compensation." Samuel leaned against the doorframe, his posture deceptively relaxed, though Katherine could see the tension in his shoulders. "I paid fair market value for that land. What happened afterward is my good fortune, not your concern. Like hell it isn't." The younger Harrington stepped forward. You stole that girl and the land right out from under us." "I didn't steal anything." Samuel's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. "And Miss Zimmer isn't property to be bought and sold. Now, I suggest you gentlemen get back on your horses and ride out. We can discuss business in town tomorrow if you're still inclined." Thomas Harrington's hand hovered near his gun. "We're discussing it now, Hawkins. We want half the profits from that gold claim, or we're taking the girl and the deed." In a fluid motion that happened almost too fast for Katherine to follow, Samuel drew his revolver and leveled it at Thomas Harrington's chest. "That's not going to happen. You're on my property, threatening a woman under my protection. That gives me every right to put a bullet in each of you where you stand." The standoff stretched for several tense heartbeats. Finally, Thomas Harrington took a step back, his face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, Hawkins." "Not by a long shot." "It is for tonight," Samuel replied firmly. "Now go before I lose my patience." The Harringtons and their companions retreated slowly, mounting their horses and riding off into the darkness. Samuel watched until they were out of sight, then closed and barred the door. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," he said to Katherine, who stood trembling by the fireplace. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "About the gold?" Samuel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I heard rumors about a strike in that region. That's why I was interested in your father's land." "So you used me to get to it," Katherine said, a knot forming in her stomach. "You didn't help me out of kindness at all." Samuel crossed the room to stand before her, his expression earnest. "That's not true, Katherine. Yes, I wanted the land, but when I saw what was happening, how your father was treating you, what the Harringtons intended, that changed everything. I couldn't stand by and let that happen to you." "But you didn't tell me about the gold," she persisted, fighting back tears of disappointment. "No," he admitted, "I didn't. At first because I wasn't sure the rumors were true. Later—" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Later, I was afraid you'd think exactly what you're thinking now, that I only helped you because of the land. And that's not the case, Katherine, not at all." She searched his face, wanting desperately to believe him. "Then why did you help me, Samuel?" His expression softened, and he reached out to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. "Because from the moment I saw you standing there, so brave despite everything, I couldn't imagine riding away and leaving you to that fate. And every day since then, I've thanked God that I didn't." The sincerity in his voice and the tenderness in his touch broke through Katherine's doubt. "The Harringtons will be back," she said quietly. "Yes," Samuel agreed, "but we'll be ready for them. I've worked too hard to build this life our life if you want it to be to let men like that take it away." Katherine's heart skipped at his words. "Our life." Samuel took her hands in his. "I know it's been only a few months, Katherine, but in that time, you've become essential to me. I can't imagine this place or my life without you in it. I'm not asking for an answer now, but I want you to know that when you're ready, I'd be honored to make you my wife." Joy surged through Katherine, washing away the last of her doubts. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and pressed her lips to his. Samuel responded immediately, drawing her close as the kiss deepened. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I don't need time," Katherine whispered. "My answer is yes." The threat of the Harringtons hung over them in the days that followed, but Samuel took precautions, hiring 2 trusted ranch hands to stay on the property and alerting the territorial marshal to the situation. Katherine insisted on learning to handle a revolver, and Samuel taught her patiently, his pride evident as she proved to be a quick study. They were married by the minister in Pine Creek 2 weeks later, with Mrs. Abernathy and a few neighbors as witnesses. The simple ceremony, followed by a modest celebration at their ranch, was everything Katherine could have wished for. That night, as they lay together in what was now their shared bedroom, Samuel traced gentle patterns on Catherine's bare shoulder. "I never expected this," he confessed softly. "When I rode out that day to look at Zimmer's land, I was thinking about horses and gold claims. I never imagined I'd find something far more precious." Katherine smiled, nestling closer to him. "And I never imagined that my father's betrayal would lead me to the greatest happiness I've ever known." "Life has a strange way of working out." "That it does," Samuel agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And we've only just begun." The Harringtons made one more attempt to press their claim, but when confronted by Samuel, Katherine, and their two ranch hands all armed and resolute, they finally recognized defeat. The discovery of gold brought prosperity to the region, and Samuel's share, combined with his growing reputation for breeding exceptional horses, established their ranch as one of the finest in the territory. By the following spring, Katherine was expecting their first child. As she stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching Samuel work with a spirited young colt in the corral, she marveled at how completely her life had changed in less than a year. From the brink of servitude to the Harringtons, she had found love, security, and a future filled with promise. Samuel looked up, catching her eye across the yard, and his face broke into the warm smile he reserved only for her. He secured the colt, then walked to join her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her expanding waistline. "How are my two favorite people today?" he murmured against her hair. Katherine leaned back against his solid chest, covering his hands with her own. "We are perfect. Everything is perfect." And in that moment, as the Wyoming sun bathed their homestead in golden light, and the promise of their future stretched before them like the endless western sky, Katherine knew that Samuel had kept the promise implicit in his actions on the day they met. He had paid nothing for her freedom, but had given her everything in return.